Hello. Now I know what you're going to think here. Being somebody based in the UK, of what possible interest could it be to any of us in this country for the US midterm elections? Well, plenty, to be honest. Just like the recent elections in Brazil, recent ones in Italy, they are of great interest when it comes to geopolitics. We either get a feeling of the way the West is going to be. And I know that many people in the UK right now are wanting a general election as well, because of the fucking state of our government. However, we are not having a general election, that's quite clear. The Tories are going to just hang on for as long as possible. They're knowing that next election cycle it's going to be a Labour government. I don't think anybody is denying that now. So we turn our attention to the midterms, which are occurring in 6 days' time, 8th of November. And already, let me just add, when it comes to misinformation, disinformation across the media platforms, the American elections are always very interesting to see how this information disseminates across the various platforms. I don't know whether you know recently that there has been an article written exposing the control of platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and regarding what is classified as disinformation. A good example of this was Hunter Biden's laptop was suppressed, the story regarding that on media platforms. You weren't even allowed to talk about it. It's going to be interesting to see now that Elon Musk owns Twitter, just how free-flowing the information will be. It's quite interesting because the other day, Ilhan Omar, one of the, I think she's a congresswoman, tweeted about the person who attacked Paul Pelosi. Said he was a right-winger, and right-wing rhetoric in the House has driven people like him to do acts of violence. Well, it was a horrible crime. I think Paul was very lucky to survive it, given the injuries sustained by being walloped in the head by a hammer. He's very lucky, and obviously wish him a speedy recovery. However, I replied back to Ms. Omar and said, well, he's a hemp jeweler. He's in favour of BLM, has LGBTQ plus flags flying from the property where he lives, although he lives in a bus in the driveway to the house. Long story, won't go into it. And even his neighbours said he was probably left-wing leaning. And it just didn't fit what Ilan was saying about this attacker. And now obviously, 3 or 4 days down the news cycle, it's come out that he is actually a left-winger, although he did take a lot of drugs and apparently was a QAnon person. I'm still not really over familiar with QAnon, to be honest. I assume it's a right-wing belief. But anyway, regardless of that, he's for all intents and purposes, he's left-leaning. He lives in San Francisco. he just took a lot of drugs, he's a bit of a nutter, and apparently a paedophile as well, which is, yeah. He was also an illegal immigrant into America. He's Canadian born, so he should have been deported, really, according to American media that I've read recently. Although Gavin Newsom is, it's a sanctuary state, so that probably wouldn't have happened. So the control of the narrative is already starting to branch out onto it. Oh, I should say that the usual suspects defending Ilhan Omar were quick to point out to me that, you know, San Francisco doesn't need to be a hotbed of right-wing rhetoric for one person to go bonkers. Well, that's true, yes, that is true. But, you know, just look at this guy's lifestyle and you get kind of the clear impression that somebody who's right-wing, ultra right-wing, doesn't live the life that this chap did. We're going to see more of this, I've got a feeling. So let's get on to the reasons why there's a control of the narrative where possible. Not so much Twitter, but as I said, it will be interesting to see just how the narrative forms on Twitter. In short, control of the Senate, no overall control, it looks like. However, the control of the House is going to fall to Republicans, which is interesting for Joe Biden's administration. I don't want to pick up on a lot of these things, but they're saying that some of them, some swing states, I don't get myself too involved with things like that. I'm just going to have a quick look at, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. It's not the House, it's the Senate I wanted to look at. Because, yes, there we go. Pennsylvania. John Fetterman versus Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz. At the moment, the polling is that Fetterman is due to win. I have a feeling that the polling numbers are slightly out of date because of his debate appearance, in which it's been slated as being the worst ever debate in American history. Now, I should point out that John Fetterman back in May of this year had a stroke. So he's recovering from a stroke. It's obviously affected his ability to talk and process conversations. He uses some technology for him to be able to converse accurately, this technology was engaged during the debate, but he said it failed. However, the people who produced the technology and the software said that they calibrated it, and their tests prior to the debate said it was all working fine. So who do you believe? So that's going to be an interesting vote runoff there. I'm going to be very interested to see how Pennsylvania do. Regarding if I'd already had the ballot open for postal, and that opened some weeks before the debate, so it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. And the other one is Nevada. Adam Laxett and Catherine Masto. Now, Catherine is the Democrat, and she is trailing, although she has gained over the past few weeks. But Laxalt, the Republican, is still out in front, but it's tightening, so it's going to be interesting to see. And because of the polling now, it's turned into one of those flip states. So Yeah, going to be interesting to see that one. And Arizona, Kelly, the incumbent Democrat, and Blake Masters. Now, the polling I'm looking at here has got Kelly way out in front. Way out in front. But over the past few days, Blake Masters has managed to pull things back. So again, this is another state that is going to be a swing state. And finally, Georgia. Now this has now been classified as a toss-up. They can't determine, even with the margins of error, they can't determine who's going to take this. So you've got Herschel Walker, who is the Republican candidate, and Raphael Warnock. Interestingly enough, even though it is a toss-up, they're saying that Herschel Walker has done enough to unseat Warnock, so he can take control. Now, why is all this important? It's important because of the overall majority in the Senate. If these polling figures are correct, the Republicans will take the House, and they could take the Senate, which leaves Biden's administration somewhere up shit creek. And this has got the Democrats worried, very worried in fact. What does it mean for us? Well, it means for us in the UK that it would render the Biden administration fairly... It would remove its teeth, if it's ever bared its teeth. You could possibly have a lot more people in the House favouring the Ukraine war. It seems a bipartisan issue, to be honest. I know that some of the progressives like AOC, Ilhan Omar, are backing the war in Ukraine, whereas the people that voted them in are in their districts are saying, why are you doing this? It goes against the progressive thought ideology that you don't back foreign wars. And they've been heckled a great deal just recently over their stance on the war. As I say, it's a bipartisan issue. However, control of the House for the Democrats, well, you know where I'm going with that one. Control of the Senate as well, well, again, it's going to be the same kind of thing. There's a shift, there's a political shift in the Americas at the moment, I think. There's a lot of key factors. Obviously, high inflation, high gas prices for them is crucial. The cost of living, their food prices have gone up exponentially, and they're all blaming the Biden administration for it. Although his press secretary is saying that, these things were out of his control. However, when the gas prices go down a few cents, he says, yeah, it's down to my actions. I've done this. And I think these particular sound bites are not washing with the American public anymore. It's just not happening. And I mentioned the Paul Pelosi thing earlier on because the guy who carried out the attack was an illegal immigrant. He should have been deported. But as I said, San Francisco is a sanctuary state. But people are just getting fed up with it, with the rise in crime in certain areas. Chicago, again, is another one. San Francisco has got the crime rate is climbing now. Also Pennsylvania. I talked about it being a swing state for the Senate with John Letton running. So there's all to play for. Obviously none of this, because it's polling, it's 6 days out, can't be taken for granted, because as we know in this country, polling doesn't mean a great deal. There's a silent majority. Even when they're polled, they never give things up. I mean, just look at the polling for Brexit. According to the polls, it was a slam dunk that we would be remaining. However, So it's worth keeping an eye on. I will do a follow-up video after the midterms just to see how the Americans have voted, but I'm not going to give a prediction. I can't, because it's just based on polling, and as we know, as I said, polling isn't particularly accurate at times. But it looks like the Republicans will take the House, significant amount from the Democrats. The Senate, it's possible that they could get a majority, but is it enough to control the Senate? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's possible, but looking at this polling, I don't think it is. All right. Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate you stopping by, spending 15 minutes of your day. Have a good day. Goodbye.